Deborah Moore. I'm the director of the Frankel Center for Judaic Studies at the University of Michigan, and I also hold an appointment in the history department. I'm a professor of American Jewish history, and my focus in my own work has been on the history of American Jews, mostly in the 20th century, written on a kind of trilogy on Jews in New York City in the period prior to World War II, what's called the second generation, the children of the immigrants, and then I followed them to war in a book called GI Jews that looks at their experiences as Jews in military service fighting in World War II. And then I also wrote a book on the post-war period where I looked at Jewish migrations to cities like Los Angeles and Miami that are now the second and third largest concentrations of Jewish population, sort of Jewish cities, as it were, in the United States. So it was as a historian that I was invited to this workshop. I did an opening with a colleague from Kentucky who spoke on Muslims in America, and we sort of presented the history of our respective religious groups. And from there, the conversations moved into issues where Jews and Muslims have both commonalities and differences. So there was a session that dealt with sacred scripture, Bible scholarship, Quran scholarship, a section that dealt with law, and the kinds of questions that a community that's really serious about law, as both Jews and Muslims are, how they deal with issues in the 21st century, laws that come from a much older period that are rooted in a relationship to sacred scripture. And then today we focused on issues of assimilation and authenticity, and there was a great session, public session last night that I'm sure people can see on the JTS website. For those of us involved in the workshop, I think that this was an extraordinarily important project for the Jewish Theological Seminary to do. I think it's crucial to be speaking in the framework of Jewish religious leadership, which the seminary represents, in the United States. And as Arnie Eisen said, I think briefly last night, the seminary does have a long history of being concerned with interreligious dialogue that goes back to its founder Solomon Schechter and then Louis Finkelstein during World War II. And so this is a really important step to recognize that in the context of the United States, Muslims are a minority just like Jews are a minority, and that there are certain elements of commonality that one can appreciate, as well as differences that one can come to explore. And I know in terms of my own work, I've had some Muslim students in class, of course, who have studied my history of American Jews, taken that, and they've taken it as a way of sort of thinking about what's the history of Muslims in America. And that I now know a lot more than I did, and I think that I will, at certain points now, integrate into my own teaching some comparisons that just to let students recognize, because I always talk about Christian developments as the majority religion in the United States, and it would be very valuable, I think, to talk about Muslim developments now as, within the framework of the United States, another minority religion.